Now for another example of finding f inverse given the formula for f of x, maybe one that is slightly a little more challenging algebraically. So the function whose inverse we wish to find is f of x equals 5x plus 5 divided by the quantity 7x minus 3. But our steps will remain the same. We're going to let y equal f of x, so we'll let y equal 5x plus 7 divided by 7x minus 3. We'll switch x and y to get the rule for the inverse, which would mean that we have x equals 5y plus 7 divided by 7y minus 3. And then lastly, the hardest task of all will be to solve for y in the inverse formula that I'm circling in red. And that will be y in terms of x and will be the formula for f inverse. Okay, so let's think about the algebra involved in solving this. One, you're solving for y. So when you look at the fact that y is to the first power in the numerator and the denominator, my first thought would be kind of unpack it so that you don't have a numerator and a denominator. So I'm going to cross multiply, and I'm going to distribute and kind of keep, as we say in algebra, following our nose until we know what we are doing. Okay, now to know what we're doing, I see that we now have a statement that doesn't have fractions in it, and the y variable is to the first power throughout the equation. So that means it's linear in y. So then my best course of action would be to isolate on one side of the equation all of the terms that contain y and move any terms that do not on the other side of the equation. So we would have 7xy minus 3x equals 5y plus 7, which would then, rearranging, would lead us to 7xy minus 5y equals 3x plus 7. Now we can factor out y to the first, leaving us with y times 7x minus 5 equals 3x plus 7, or y equals 3x plus 7 divided by 7x minus 5. And once we're here, because we swapped x and y in step 2, we have the inverse function. And we could go ahead and put that guy. And with the calc pad will let us type all of that in, like so. Now, while I'm on the topic of this problem, let me point out a couple of things. Okay, one, f of x has a domain that is all x except 7x minus 3 being 0. Likewise, f inverse has a domain that is all x except where its denominator equals 0. So if I solve each of these equations, I find that the number 3/7 is not in the domain of f, and the number 5/7 is not in the domain of f inverse. Now, if you'll recall from my overview video, the domain of one is the range of the other. So since the domain of f is the interval everything except 3/7, that automatically means that the range of f inverse is that same set. Likewise, if the domain of f inverse we have determined is everything except 5/7, then that actually determines for us the range of the function f. Now I would suggest that you guys take the two functions just for fun and graph them in your graphing calculator and look at the symmetry. Okay, and so if you'll graph it and then try to draw it out by hand, it'll make a little more sense to you. But again, the process is very clear cut. Hardest part is algebra. And then lastly, the domain of the function is the range of the inverse and vice versa.